The Thing from Another World was a 1951 science fiction monster classic. And I honestly didn't know many of the actors from this particular film, other than James Arnes from Gunsmoke fame. But that's not really the thing that's so interesting about this film. What's cool is that this is like the granddaddy of the film where it is a group, a scrappy band of survivors. They're in a lone station trying to survive. They're isolated from the rest of the world, and there's some sort of monster out there. Don't know really what it is, but it's picking off the people one by one. So right from the beginning, what I love about this film is that creepy Dmitri Tiomkin music. You see the thing in the credits that appears and it crumbles on the screen. I mean, the credits and the music is just so awesome, and then it appears atop the windy, snowy background, somewhere very cold, very nasty, and very not Florida. So the story opens up. We've got this character, Ned Scott. He's played by Douglas Spencer. And, you know, he's maybe sort of the everyman that we kind of identify with as his character goes off on this adventure. He is meeting with some Air Force officers that will bring him to Polar Expedition 6 at the North Pole, per the request of scientist Dr. Arthur Carrington, who's played by Robert Cornthwaite, with plans to learn more about an unusual aircraft that has crashed nearby. Kenneth Tobey plays Captain Patrick Hendry, and he's pretty much the leader of the group. He's this no-nonsense military character who's never really played too over the top, and he manages to keep his cool even when things start to get a little strange later in the film. Once they arrive, we meet some of the other characters there and realize that there was once a relationship between this Captain Hendry and Nikki Nicholson, who's played here by Margaret Sheridan. They had sort of an interesting romance here on screen. I didn't quite get the part about her tying him up to a chair to drink booze, but whatever. There was a little bit of silliness, I guess, in the center of an otherwise very creepy film. So eventually this band of scientists, they head outside into the cold snow to investigate the crashed aircraft, and they discover that it actually appears to be a large circular shape, like, oh, I don't know, a crashed UFO? So they attempt to melt away the ice to get to it using thermite, which seemed a little excessive to me, but whatever. And during this process, they manage to get a large frozen body out of the ice, and they bring it back to the camp. Captain Hendry takes over at the camp, and he orders the reporter Ned Scott not to report any of this. And he also tells Dr. Carrington not to examine the body yet, not until he gets further orders. You know, he's just pretty much playing it by the book. And then they put a watch on the body in the ice. And, well, wouldn't you know it, the guy who's put on watch puts a heating blanket on the ice, not realizing, I guess, that it was plugged in. And soon enough, it starts melting the ice. All right, that was a little silly, but I guess, come on, we got to get the monster out somehow. And sure enough, once thawed, this creature gets up and tears off into the night, attacking some sled dogs on the way, and the dogs even manage to rip off one of his arms, and it's not really overly gory. You know, this is an older movie. So they find his arm and they bring it back to examine. So yeah, again, 1951, there's not a lot of gore and creepiness like that. And I like the fact that we don't really see much of the monster at this point. The scientists examine the arm and they notice that the fingers start to move by themselves on this severed hand. So that was kind of cool. And at this point, this Dr. Carrington character starts to think that this alien is a superior life form and that they need to speak with it. And we know this won't end well, especially when they find a dead sled dog drained of blood. But, there's got to be that character in the film that sees the superiority of the evil life form that's killing people. They eventually face off with the creature, and it's big thing. It's James Arnes under a lot of makeup. You don't really see his face much. In fact, you don't see the character, the alien, very much at all in the film. And I love that. It adds to the creepiness. They douse this poor alien with kerosene and light it on fire, which, as far as special effects go from 1951, that was pretty awesome. And, kudos to the stunt guy, because that fire looks amazing. I mean, he's like totally torched. So the creature screams, is on fire, makes this terrible howl, and runs out into the snow is covered with fire. Well, again, I just really admire the effort that the stuntman put into this. Running off into the snow covered with fire. So apparently the creature put the fire out, runs away. But we're not finished yet. And without saying much more, there's a final showdown that will take place. It's just straight up creepy and awesome. And in fact, I even put a couple cells here of the film where, I don't usually do this kind of brainy film analysis type of thing, but I just wanted to kind of break down, as you watch the alien walk through the corridor, you can just kind of see how claustrophobic the set is. He just blocks up so much of the scene, and then the people who are just facing off with him, well, they're all crowded and packed into this set as well. It's one of the things I really admired about this film is the containment, the claustrophobia that you really feel when you're watching this movie. Some quick closing thoughts. This is an older film, but it still manages to do an amazing job of creating fear of this unknown monster out in this remote Arctic station. And I'll admit that sometimes it looked and felt a little bit like it was filmed on a set. But there are other points where, especially when the heaters go out and you start to see the character's breath, that you really start to feel that cold confinement in this small station out in the middle of nowhere. And that's what really lends to the creepiness of this formula. I mean, the nearest assistance is what? Anchorage? So if they need help or backup, it's going to be a while. They can't just leave and run anywhere, especially if the weather stays bad. And I think they even make mention at one point in the film that the weather was around -60 outside. So, if you try to go anywhere on foot, you're not going to make it. So these people are trapped. And regarding the other actors in the film, I really wasn't familiar with many of them here, other than James Arnes, I mentioned earlier from Gunsmoke. The Internet Movie Database makes mention of the fact that Paul Frees is in the film as one of the secondary characters. I didn't really catch him here, but Paul Frees, the voice of the host, the ghost host at the Haunted Mansion. Ha ha ha, foolish mortals. That guy. So, and then just a quick note too that this film was remade much later as The Thing in 1982, directed by John Carpenter, and this is a much more gory retelling of the story. And while I'm not really a huge fan of that 80s era body horror genre, as I usually focus on all ages films from long ago, The Thing from Another World is a sci-fi monster classic. It clearly inspired many films to follow, and it's worth checking out. And keep looking, keep watching the skies.